I, 28 million, was a week away from marrying the woman I believed was the love of my life. Emma, 26F, was everything I had ever dreamed of. Brilliant, kind, funny in the most unexpected ways. We'd been together for 3 years, and in that time I never once questioned her honesty, until now. It started with a phone call late at night. She was asleep, her phone buzzing on the nightstand. I wouldn't usually check, but something about the caller ID, Nathan Dashwork, caught my eye. Emma had told me she worked remotely with only a small team, and I'd never heard that name before. Curiosity, or maybe instinct, led me to answer. What I heard changed everything. "Nathan," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There was silence, then a voice, confused and slightly panicked. "Emma? Number who is this?" A pause, then, "Who are you?" He hung up. I tried to wake Emma, but she brushed me off groggily. The next morning, when I asked about Nathan, she froze. Her answer was mechanical, like it had been rehearsed, and that's when the pieces started to fall apart. Over the next few days, I uncovered a part of her life I never knew existed. A second identity, another city, and a man who thought she was his fiancée too. Now I'm stuck. I love Emma, or whoever she really is. But I can't unsee the truth. Do I protect the woman I thought I knew, or expose her secret and destroy 2 lives, maybe more? Chapter 2. The Other Ring. I didn't confront her right away. Something told me I had to be sure. That, or I was afraid of the answer. Over the next day, I dug deeper. I called in a favor from my friend Ryan, a tech guy who owed me from college. Within hours, he found a LinkedIn profile under the name Emily Hart. Same face, slightly different haircut, and a whole different life. Based in Chicago, marketing director, engaged to Nathan Cole. I stared at her smiling face on the screen. It was Emma, but not my Emma. This version of her had a fiancé who posted gushy photos and referred to her as his forever. Was I his version of Nathan? That night, I sat across from her at dinner. She laughed like nothing had changed, told me about her bachelorette brunch and how her cousin spilled mimosa on her white dress. She leaned across the table to squeeze my hand, her diamond ring catching the light. I wanted to ask her right then, but instead I smiled. I lied. I played the part of the man she thought she had fooled, because I needed to know why. Why the 2 lives? Why me? The next day, I booked a flight to Chicago. I told Emma I had a last-minute work thing in Boston. She kissed me goodbye like it was any other day. My heart was a stone. I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe Nathan was fake. Maybe this was all a mix-up. But when I saw him, waiting outside a sleek downtown condo building, holding flowers and checking his watch, any remaining denial vanished. He looked nervous, in love. He looked like me 1 week ago. I followed him at a distance. He entered the building. Minutes later, Emily, stepped out onto the balcony above, waved down at him, and blew him a kiss. My stomach turned. 2 lives, 2 rings, 1 woman, and now I knew her darkest secret, but I still didn't know her truth. Chapter 3. The Stranger I Loved. I stood across the street, hidden beneath the awning of a coffee shop, watching the balcony where Emma, was laughing with Nathan. She looked so natural, so effortless, like she belonged in that life. My stomach clenched. Who was I really engaged to? That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the hotel bed in Chicago, staring at the 2 rings I now knew existed. One on her hand when she was with me, another when she was with him, subtly different, platinum instead of gold. A different cut of diamond. She wasn't sloppy, she had a system. I started to list the inconsistencies in my head. Her sudden business trips, that she claimed were for client meetings, the way she avoided social media, said she didn't like sharing too much. Her refusal to let me meet her parents until after the wedding, how she never let me pick her up from the airport. They weren't quirks, they were lies. The next morning, I did something reckless. I followed her. Not like a stalker, more like a man trying to remember who he was before his life fell apart. I waited outside her building until she left with Nathan, both dressed for brunch. They kissed like newlyweds, and I felt something in me fracture. She was happy, radiant, in love, but with him or with me? I trailed them to a small restaurant in Lincoln Park, where they sat outside beneath hanging ivy and sunlight. As they laughed over coffee, I did the unthinkable. I approached their table. Her laughter stopped mid-breath when she saw me. Her face drained of color, the look in her eyes, terror, not guilt. "Emma," I said. Nathan looked confused. "Emily, who is this?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out, just a whisper. "No." I glanced at Nathan, who stood instinctively placing a hand on her arm. "Do you know this guy?" She didn't answer, so I did. I'm her fiancée, I said. The other one. Chapter 4, The Collapsed Silence. For one impossible moment, time fractured. I could hear the clink of cutlery from nearby tables, the distant whir of traffic, even the wind brushing against the ivy wall, but not a single word from her. Emily, just stared at me like I had torn a hole in her universe. Nathan turned to her, his voice low and sharp. Emily, what is he talking about? She stood up too fast, knocking over her water. Can we not do this here? She said, looking at me with eyes wide and wet. Please. No, I said, my voice steady, colder than I felt. We are doing this now, because you chose this. People were starting to look. Nathan grabbed her arm. Emily, say something. Her shoulders sagged. The fight left her. I'm sorry, she whispered, so softly it barely reached me. Then she turned to Nathan and said, his name is Daniel. And I was supposed to marry him next week. The words hit him like a bullet. Nathan stepped back, mouth open, blinking like he didn't understand English. Then he laughed, one short bitter sound, and looked at me. Is this some kind of scam? No scam, I said. Just your fiancé living two lives. Emma sank into her chair and put her head in her hands. I never meant for it to go this far, she murmured. Nathan sat down again, jaw tight. You've been with both of us. For how long? She didn't answer. So I did. 3 years. Nathan stared at her. Jesus, Emma, who even are you? She finally looked up, and for the first time since I'd met her, I saw the truth in her eyes. Raw, human, afraid. My real name is Claire, she said, and I'm not who either of you thought I was. Chapter 5. Claire Nathan didn't speak. He just stared at her, Claire, as if trying to reassemble the woman he thought he knew from a pile of broken glass. I was no better. 3 years, a home, a future planned, a wedding a week away, and I had never even known her name. I need you both to listen, Claire said softly. Her voice wasn't the polished, confident tone Emma used. This voice was quieter, sadder, real. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small photo, creased and faded. She placed it on the table. A girl, maybe 16, with long auburn hair and a bruised smile, standing between two men who looked like they belonged in a mugshot. My name is Claire Morgan, she said. I grew up in Arizona. My father was a con artist, my older brother too. I spent my childhood running from warrants, living in motels, changing names. I didn't go to a real school until I was 14. I learned how to lie before I learned how to drive. Nathan scoffed. So this is in your blood? No, she said quickly. I'm not blaming them. I left that life. I ran. But the thing is, when you've spent your whole life pretending, it's hard to stop. You start to believe the lies yourself. She looked at me then, right at me. Her eyes were red but steady. When I met you, Daniel, I wanted to be someone real. I thought I could start over, but then I met Nathan a few months later, and I don't know why I didn't stop it. I told myself I was protecting both of you from the mess I was, that I could be the woman each of you needed. And you thought you could keep it up forever? I asked bitterly. She flinched. Number, I thought I'd choose one of you, I just didn't know how. Nathan shook his head and stood, pushing his chair back. I don't need to hear more, I'm done. He looked at me. You should be too. Claire didn't stop him. She just sat there, hands folded, waiting. I waited until Nathan disappeared down the street before I spoke again. You lied about everything. Your name, your job, your entire identity. So tell me, Claire, was any of it ever real? She didn't blink. Yes, you were. Chapter 6. Claire, I watched Daniel sit in silence, his jaw tight, eyes shadowed by something deeper than anger. Betrayal. That was the worst part. I hadn't just lied to him. I had made him love a lie. And yet, when he asked if any of it was real, I didn't hesitate. Yes, you were. Because he was. From the moment I met him in that bookstore, stumbling over his words while asking for a recommendation on something romantic but not cheesy, I felt something unfamiliar, safe. I hadn't felt safe since I was 13. My real name was Claire Morgan, but I'd buried that identity long ago. Emma was who I became when I wanted stability. Emily was for ambition. Neither were real, not entirely, just masks I wore to survive. But with Daniel, I forgot I was wearing one. The irony? I hadn't meant to fall in love with either of them. Nathan was supposed to be a short-term distraction, someone to remind me I was still in control, but he was kind, honest, devoted. And suddenly I was two people, two women, in love with two good men, and belonging to neither. The guilt ate at me every day. There were moments when I almost told the truth, after Daniel's mother sent us her wedding veil, when Nathan gave me the key to his condo. But I was a coward. I kept hoping the lie would collapse on its own. It did. just not the way I expected. Now Daniel was staring at me like I was a stranger in a familiar body, and maybe I was. "I should have told you sooner," I said, "but I was scared you'd leave before I could explain." "You were right," he said. His voice was cold. "You just didn't expect to be caught." I nodded. No point in defending myself. "Why didn't you just walk away?" he asked suddenly. "You could have disappeared. You've done it before." I looked him in the eye. "Because this time I wanted to stay." He said nothing, just stood and walked away. And for the first time in years, I didn't run. Chapter 7. Splinters I walked. For hours, maybe. Through the parks, along the lake, down streets I didn't know. My legs moved because they had to, because standing still felt like drowning. Every memory with her was a splinter now. I kept pulling them out, only to find more buried beneath the skin. Claire. That name didn't fit in my mouth. Not yet. It was too sharp, too strange. She had never introduced herself that way to me. To me, she had always been Emma, the woman who smiled crookedly when she was nervous, who sang to herself while brushing her teeth, who cried during commercials and told me she didn't know why. But that was just one version of her, and now I didn't know if it was the real one. The betrayal hurt, yes. But worse than that was the uncertainty, the not knowing what had been genuine. Her laugh, our road trip playlist, the way she held my hand during takeoff because she said flying scared her, was that real? Or was it a line she used on Nathan too? I didn't go back to the hotel. I called Ryan. "You okay, man?" he asked after one look at me through the phone. "No," I said, "but I need a favor." He didn't ask questions. He never did. I told him I needed a background check on Claire Morgan, everything he could find. If I was going to make peace with what had happened, I needed the truth, the whole truth, not the carefully curated version she gave us at that table. I needed to know who I'd almost married. When I finally returned to the hotel late that night, my phone buzzed. Claire. I stared at the name for a long time. Emma was gone. She was never real. But this, Claire, was the woman I had to deal with now. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the message she sent. "There are things I didn't tell you, about who I was, about what I ran from. If you want the truth, come see me, tomorrow, 10 a.m, Cafe Vida, no more lies." I stared at the screen, heart pounding, not knowing if I was walking into closure or into something much darker, but I knew one thing, I'd be there. Chapter 8. Ghost Files. Ryan wasn't a hacker, not officially, but he knew how to get into places most people didn't even know existed. He called me early the next morning. "You're not going to like this," he said. "I already don't." I traced everything, her aliases, past addresses, tax records, anything that stuck to her real name, Claire Morgan. "You were right. She's a ghost, multiple identities, multiple lives, and at least 2 sealed juvenile files." Juvenile? Yeah, but here's the part that matters. He paused. I could hear him clicking through files, then he let out a sigh. She was involved in a federal case when she was 17. Her brother and father ran a long-term fraud operation in 3 states. Fake investments, stolen identities, credit card schemes. Claire was listed as a minor accomplice. She turned on them, testified. I blinked. She turned them in? Yup, under protection, relocated, new identity. That's where Emma starts showing up. My guess? She's been running ever since, first from her family, then from the fear they'd come back. A strange chill settled over me. All this time I thought I'd uncovered a selfish liar, a manipulator, but maybe she'd just been trying to survive. Ryan's voice softened. "Dan, it doesn't excuse what she did to you, but this girl's life hasn't exactly been a straight line." I hung up and sat in silence, heart pounding. All those little details that didn't make sense. Her hyper-awareness in crowds, the way she flinched at police sirens, the constant guard she kept up. They weren't lies. They were habits born from a life of fear. I looked at the clock. 9:52 a.m., 8 minutes until I saw her again. And now I wasn't just meeting a liar, I was meeting a survivor. Chapter 9. Cafe Vida, 10 a.m. sharp. The bell above the cafe door chimed as I stepped inside. The scent of espresso and warm bread wrapped around me, almost softening the tightness in my chest. Almost. She was already there, sitting at a corner table by the window, wearing a dark sweater. No makeup, hair tied back, stripped of all the polished versions of herself. Claire, not Emma, not Emily, just her. When she saw me, she stood quickly, then hesitated. "Daniel," she said, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't sit, not yet. "I talked to someone," I said. "I know about your past, your family, what you did." She closed her eyes for a moment, then nodded. "So, now you know." I sat, slowly. Not because I forgave her, but because I was ready to hear her. "You testified against them," I said. "You were 17. She looked out the window as if the city might swallow her. "They used me, trained me to lie, smile, distract, steal. I thought it was normal for a long time until I saw what it did to the people they hurt." "And you turned them in?" She met my eyes. "It cost me everything. I was in witness protection for 2 years. New name, new life. Then I aged out, and they told me, 'You're free now.' But I wasn't." "Because you didn't know who you were without the lies," I said quietly. She gave a broken smile. "Exactly. So I kept building new versions of myself, hoping one of them would feel real. But none of them did. Until you." The words hit like a wound I didn't know I still had. "Then why keep lying?" She looked pained. "Because I didn't think I deserved a real life. I was always waiting for someone to pull the rug out to say, 'We know who you are.' So I stayed ahead of it, until I couldn't anymore." Silence hung between us, thick and raw. Finally, she reached into her bag and placed something on the table. Her engagement ring. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know the truth before I disappear again, this time for good." I looked at the ring, then at her, and in that moment, I realized something terrifying. I didn't know if I wanted her to walk away, or if I still loved her anyway. Chapter 10. The choice I held the ring in my hand, feeling its cold weight, the symbol of a future that almost was, and maybe never would be. Claire watched me, her eyes searching, vulnerable. "Why tell me now?" I asked. "Why not walk away quietly like you said?" She sighed. "Because you deserve to know who you loved, and maybe because I needed to say goodbye to the idea of us." I looked at her, really looked, at the woman beneath the layers of secrets and pain. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I made a decision. "Maybe we don't have to have all the answers today," I said. "Maybe the truth isn't just about who you were, but who you want to be." Claire's eyes flickered with something like hope. "I don't know if I can trust you again," I added honestly, "and I don't know if I can forgive what you did. But maybe I want to try." She reached out, took my hand, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something real, not a lie, not a secret, but the fragile, messy possibility of a second chance.